Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. So last week I talked about my 10 favorite Disneyland attractions, as in both Disneyland and California Adventure. Now for this week, I'm going to go over to the other major theme park and talk about my 10 favorite attractions from Universal Studios. Now before we get started, here's a little criteria. Last week I only limited the list to the Disneyland Resort because I haven't been to the other theme parks with the exception of Epcot at Disney World. This list, however, is going to be different because there aren't enough attractions at Universal Studios Hollywood, either past or present, that would fill a top 10 list. But I have been to the Universal Orlando Resort multiple times, and I'm going to just cheat with this list and include rides from Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure. I mean, I guess it's not cheating since I've technically been to those theme parks and have ridden on some of their most iconic rides. But don't worry, Disney World is such a massive resort, bigger than Disneyland, Universal Studios Hollywood, and Universal Orlando, that whenever I go there and go to the other theme parks, I'll make a top 10 list dedicated to that resort. But as of now, this list will contain rides from Universal Studios Hollywood, Universal Studios Florida, and Islands of Adventure. I have not been to Universal Studios Japan, Singapore, and Beijing has yet to open. So without further ado, let's jump into this list, starting with number 10. The Incredible Hulk Coaster. We're kicking things off right away with one of Islands of Adventure's key attractions. And this might be my favorite roller coaster in terms of like the big, massive looping coasters. I visited Universal Orlando Resort in 2006 and 2008, before the MCU was ever a thing. And before I even cared about Marvel as a whole, Spider-Man and the Hulk were two of my favorite characters. And this roller coaster is just awesome. It's fast, it's intense, it will really, to quote Marvel vs. Capcom 2, take you for a ride. And it has my absolute favorite story of when I went there with my family in 2006. In 2006, my family and I took a vacation to Orlando, Florida, specifically Universal Orlando, because I was obsessed with the theme parks there, and I still am. But when it came to the Incredible Hulk roller coaster, my dad said, I'm going to outride you in terms of all the attractions here in the parks, both Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios Florida. And the first thing we did right off the bat was the Incredible Hulk roller coaster. And just one ride of the Incredible Hulk coaster was enough for my dad to just throw in the towel and say, I give up. And right after he threw in that towel, I went back on the Incredible Hulk again. And it really bums me out that that ride is so far away because I absolutely love it. And I'm glad that I'm talking about the Incredible Hulk in a post-MCU world, because the Avengers scene where Hulk is just thrashing Loki all across the floor, that sums up how the Incredible Hulk coaster beat up my dad. So, sorry Dad, I had to tell this story. Number 9. E.T. Adventure. Now I actually did go on this ride when it was at Universal Studios Hollywood, twice, and I remember it vividly. This is pretty much Universal's equivalent to Peter Pan's Flight, in the sense that you're flying, it's got a cityscape just like in Peter Pan. And this ride makes me weirdly emotional. Like sure, it might be a little outdated by today's standards, but when I got to re-ride the ride at Universal Studios Florida, it kind of gets me teary-eyed. Not just the fact that it's no longer in Hollywood, but just the fact that E.T. is one of my favorite movies of all time. And man, that John Williams theme always does it. Every time you hear the E.T. flying theme, it really does get an emotion out of you. And it's such a creative ride with all the little characters in the Green Planet. I love the little mechanic at the end of the ride where before you get on, you have to give a team member a card with your name on it. I don't know how they've changed it now that we're in the pandemic, but basically at the end of the ride, E.T. will say, "Goodbye, Alexander," and basically name everyone that's on your ride vehicle, and it just makes that ride feel a lot more special at the end of the day. Again, I'm bummed that it's not at Universal Studios Hollywood anymore, but the fact that it's still at Universal Studios Florida, even when all the other opening day attractions have been demolished and replaced, makes this ride feel a lot special, and I hope this stays in time for me to go back again. Number 8. Revenge of the Mummy, the ride. And when I say that, I mean both versions in Hollywood and Orlando, because they're quite different. Yes, they might be the same indoor roller coaster type attraction, but they have enough differences and enough strengths and weaknesses compared to each other to where I couldn't pick just one. The Hollywood version replaced the original E.T. ride, so it didn't have a lot of space to work with, but they managed to make it work in my opinion. The ride gets more to the point than the Florida version does, and there's the added detail of going backwards fast, and that moment of the ride always kind of creeps me out. I mean, it's a pretty intense ride. It's pretty much Universal's equivalent to Space Mountain, except Space Mountain is more cool and Revenge of the Mummy is actually more scary. The only downside to the Hollywood version, in my opinion, is that it's too short. And nowadays, it doesn't bother me. I've gotten over it. But when I went to ride this ride on opening weekend and I had to wait in a 4-hour line, only for a ride that was as short as it was, I was like, wow, that's it? But still, the Hollywood version's a lot of fun, and the Orlando version's just as good. It does take a little longer to get to the actual roller coaster part of the ride, but because it replaced Confrontation, it has a lot more room to work with. And also, it's harder to see the track layout while on this ride, so I don't know where I'm going. I can't tell how high I am in the ride because the Confrontation show building is so big, and the Florida version has a false ending that the Hollywood version doesn't, and seeing that false ending just took me by surprise. I mean, I was 15 years old when I rode this for the first time, so I just thought, oh, the ride's done, we're gonna get off, and then nope, still going. And that strobe effect where the fake control room bursts and you see Imhotep in there creeped me out. And then this version also has a big drop, unlike the Hollywood version. A lot of fun. Both rides are quite different, but at the end of the day, I can't decide which one of them is my favorite, because they both have their strengths. Number 7. The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man. It's ironic that before I got into Marvel as a whole because of the MCU, my two favorite characters were the Hulk and Spider-Man, and both of them got the best rides at Islands of Adventure. Nowadays, there have been a lot of impressive rides that have come out in the wake of The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, but back then, this was a completely unique attraction. And the very first time I went to Universal Orlando, this ride was the first one I ever went on, and it blew my mind. Just the combination of it being a dark ride, using 3D and screens, it helps bring the ride to life in a way where the lines really are blurred between what's actually a screen and what's an actual set. The very first time you see Spider-Man jump onto the vehicle and the vehicle responds to his impact, it was incredible. I absolutely love this ride. I love the music. I love that 90s Marvel feeling that it has to it. I mean, the entire land itself, Marvel Superhero Island, feels like straight up 90s Marvel. Like the Incredible Hulk, I'm sad that this ride doesn't exist at Universal Studios Hollywood or in California, but I think with Transformers the Ride using the same technology as The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, it's a nice substitution, and California Adventures getting its own Spider-Man ride. Though it's not using the same technology as this, and I doubt that that ride could even top what The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man is. Number 6. Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. This ride holds a special place in my heart, not just because I love the Harry Potter series, but also because I used to work at the Hollywood version when it first opened 5 years ago. So I have a lot of fond memories of working at this attraction. Putting that aspect aside, however, this is just a great ride, period. It's much like The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, where it's a combination of a dark ride and a motion simulator, except the elements are more separated and not as blurred together as with Spider-Man. That being said, the benches that you ride on are really intense. It's got some great movement. It almost feels like you're on an inverted roller coaster because there are points where you feel like you're about to go upside down. The sets are incredible. It's got some great animatronics. And again, John Williams guiding you through parts of this ride with the iconic Harry Potter theme it just makes it even better. And even then, if you can't go on the ride, going through the entire queue and exploring Hogwarts Castle is worth it by itself. They really did an amazing job with the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and just making it feel alive. It really feels like you've entered the world of those books and the movies. And with Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey being its crown jewel, it definitely makes an experience in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter absolutely worth it. Now that being said, despite me working on this ride at a certain point in my life, there are 5 other attractions that I think are better than Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. And we're going to continue this list with number 5. Jaws the ride. The only way you can ever experience this attraction in the flesh is by going to Universal Studios Japan, because sadly the Orlando version doesn't exist, but I feel so lucky to have experienced that ride because it's the Universal equivalent to Disney's Jungle Cruise, except it's more intense. It's based off one of the greatest movies of all time, and I honestly think it's better than the Jungle Cruise. It doesn't feel as big as the Jungle Cruise. It definitely has a smaller feel to it with the Island of Amity, but I think the sequences that the ride creates are intense. All the skippers who have worked on it do a bang-up job, and I always dreamed of having their jobs. The skippers on the Jungle Cruise do a really good job as well, but they definitely have a corny aspect to them. The skippers on the Jaws ride are tense, they are really into those roles, and you get the best experience out of that ride when they are fully committed. And it's such a memorable ride that I can actually quote the entire script from beginning to end. Well, good morning everyone, welcome aboard Captain Jake's Amity Boat Tours. We're the best! And that's because we're the only scenic cruise on the island. My name is Alex and I'll be your skipper today as we visit the actual spots. We're back in 1974. That bad old shark Jaws devoured those poor innocent islanders. I could keep going, but that's about 5 minutes worth of material. So I'll just say that if you've never experienced the Jaws ride, I feel so sorry for you because this truly was one of the greatest that Universal has ever created. Number 4. Terminator 2 3D Battle Across Time. Not only is this just an amazing stunt show, mix of a stunt show and a 3D movie, but it was my very first exposure to the Terminator franchise. The very first time I went to Universal Studios Hollywood, I have never seen a Terminator movie or a Back to the Future movie before. So I was experiencing a lot of these movies for the first time as theme park attractions. And Terminator 2, while I didn't understand it at the time, definitely left an impact on me. But once I finally saw the first 2 Terminator movies, this attraction just got even better. The movie that was made for this attraction was directed by James Cameron, filmed in 3D before Avatar, and brought back Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, Edward Furlong, and Robert Patrick. And in my opinion, it's a fantastic follow-up to Terminator 2. It's the actual Terminator 3 in my opinion. Screw Terminator Dark Fate. This is what I consider to be the proper follow-up to Terminator 2, even if it's essentially a short film. Unfortunately, this show doesn't exist at either Hollywood or Florida, but man, is it an impressive stunt show. You can find these old attractions that no longer exist on YouTube, but nothing beats actually being there. The combination of 3D and the actual stunt performers in the finale takes my breath away every time it happens because it's such an amazing achievement in terms of theme park shows. I absolutely love it. Number 3. The Universal Studios Tour. This might be cheating for some people because you're essentially putting in many rides into one, but you can't have a list of best Universal attractions without the Studio Tour. And without this, Universal Studios theme parks may have never existed. There are a lot of reasons I love this ride. One, much like the Jaws ride, the guides that you get definitely help make the tour what it is. But that's not to put down the tram segments at all. Throughout the tram's history, there have been many great segments. Like there was the original King Kong encounter, there was the collapsing bridge, there's Flash Flood, there's Jaws, Earthquake, the old mummy's tomb, which I remember going on that and it makes me dizzy every time it happens. And then some of the newer stuff like King Kong 360 3D I think is a ton of fun. Fast and Furious Supercharged is corny, but in my eyes it's no more corny than the movies, so honestly, I think it fits right at home in terms of staying in spirit with the franchise. It's just a great ride all around. I love going on it. I always love exploring the Universal backlot through the tram. And the times that I'm lucky, I love getting my own row, so I can just move to the left or the right to get the best views of the tour. It might be my third favorite Universal attraction, but it's hands down the most important because I don't think Universal Studios Florida would have ever existed. I mean, most of their opening day attractions wouldn't have happened without the Universal Studios tour. There would be no Confrontation without King Kong Encounter. There'd be no Earthquake the Big One without Earthquake. There'd be no Jaws the Ride without Jaws. So the future of Universal theme parks owes its life to the Universal Studios tour. Number 2. The Jurassic Park River Adventure. Like Revenge of the Mummy, this is going to include both versions in Hollywood, which is no longer around, and Orlando, which does still exist. Each of them have their strengths, but also have their weaknesses. The Hollywood version definitely has a faster pace to it, and when you go into Ultrasaur Lagoon, you get 2 animatronic Brachiosauruses as opposed to the one in Universal Orlando. It's got the John Williams score playing throughout most of the ride, or all the ride, as opposed to small segments in the Orlando version. I think the animatronics are a little more appealing. They've got the more accurate dinosaur sound effects, and the big ending that leads to the drop with the T-Rex is just more intense. It's a better build-up than the Orlando version. But the Orlando version has its strengths as well. It has the advantage of being within a Jurassic Park land. Even though it moves at a slower pace than the Hollywood version, it's got some neat surprises to where you don't know what's going to happen. I remember going on the Orlando version for the first time after being so familiar with the Hollywood one, and once you get inside the building where the drop is, and there's that Jurassic Park 3 slash that happens, that scared the crap out of me because I didn't see it coming. And in Hollywood, the Dilophosauruses are outside before you enter the main building as opposed to inside right before you get to the drop. The T-Rex appears for a longer period of time and roars at you as opposed to just popping up right before you go over the drop. And I think the drop is actually a little bigger or steeper than the Hollywood version. At least that's what it feels like whenever I went on it. But that being said, the fact that the Florida version has very few movie-accurate roars is a little disappointing, which is honestly one of the reasons why I'm not opposed to them updating it to Jurassic World River Adventure, because if they can update the animatronics and actually give the dinosaurs their accurate movie roars, then I'd be okay with an update. I hope they don't. At the very least, I hope they don't update it to Jurassic World until I get to rewrite it again, because I will take Jurassic Park over Jurassic World any day. So with these 2 versions of the ride, again, I couldn't pick one. I love them both equally. Number 1. Back to the Future, the ride. You might have seen this coming. I've talked about how Back to the Future is my favorite movie of all time, so naturally Back to the Future the ride is my favorite attraction at any Universal theme park. Much like with Terminator 2 3D and Star Tours, this was my very first exposure to Back to the Future, and it was a damn good first impression. The ride itself is just amazing. It's Universal's equivalent to Star Tours, except I think this is a little better than Star Tours, because it utilizes that giant OmniMax screen rather than you being in an enclosed space looking at just a regular movie screen. That's not a mark against Star Tours because it's still good. I just think Back to the Future the ride does a better job of immersing you into the actual experience. Alan Silvestri's score guiding you through the ride makes it even more fun. Going to visit the Ice Age and the prehistoric times of Hill Valley is creative, especially since we never saw that in the movie. And much like with the original Star Tours, I'm fascinated at how this ride footage was made, because it utilizes stop motion, miniatures. It's just incredible. I would love to see actual behind the scenes footage of them filming the ride footage, just to see how it was done. Because when you see that T-Rex go after you in the ride, that's not a computer, that is a real thing there. And I just love to see how it's pulled off. Unfortunately, this ride no longer exists in any theme park at all, which I guess makes sense considering that you go to Hill Valley 2015 and the last ride to close was in Japan in 2016. So the ride was going to be outdated no matter what. Thankfully, Universal was smart enough to include the ride queue, pre-show, and actual ride footage as bonus features for the Back to the Future Blu-ray sets, because I think this is something that everyone should experience. There is a damn good reason why this is one of the best rides they've created, let alone my favorite Universal attraction of all time. And there you go, those are my picks for my 10 favorite Universal attractions from either Hollywood or Orlando. Now here's a few honorable mentions before I take off. Men in Black Alien Attack, Shrek 4D, Dueling Dragons, Waterworld, Transformers the Ride, and Jurassic World the Ride. Much like with Rise of the Resistance, I apologize for not including rides like Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, Escape from Gringotts, or Hagrid's Motorbike Adventures, and that's only because I wasn't able to ride them. The last time I visited Universal Orlando was in 2008, long before these rides even existed. But the day I go back to Universal Orlando, because I plan to do that within the next couple of years, I will definitely go on them, and I can't wait to share my experience with you guys. But until then, I want to know what you guys think about this list. Do you agree with a lot of these picks? Do you disagree? What are your favorite Universal theme park attractions? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one. Hello everyone, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching this list of my favorite Universal attractions. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on social media, whether that be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Go check out my Twitch channel and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.